Hello, pup parents, and welcome to today's episode of the Perfect Pup Podcast. My name is Devin. I am very excited for today's episode. It's a hot topic. It's one that you have probably seen or heard debated, whether it's online or with people who you know. And that topic is dog parks. So, in this episode, we are going to dive into what professional dog trainers have to say about dog parks, reasons maybe you should go to some, and then also some alternatives to dog parks. So let's get right to it. Dog parks, like I said, are a very controversial topic in many senses. First off, I want to just lay out a scenario for you that you've probably experienced in your own life. You are gone for a good chunk of the day. Maybe you were at work or you were at a friend's house, something like that. And you come home and your dog is just all kinds of amped up. They're riled up. They need some exercise. They're bored. And you say, you know what? I just want them to just kind of run free, no holds barred, not have to be on a leash, that type of thing. Let me take them to the dog park. You take them to the dog park and you just kind of let them run. And you maybe pull out your phone and you're scrolling through Instagram or you're catching up on messages from the day. And, next thing you know, you hear something that doesn't sound very good. Maybe it's kind of like a dog scrap or something, and you look up and there is your dog involved in that. I paint that picture, a very simple one, right? And I know that's kind of like worst case scenario, but I paint that picture because so many people who are going to dog parks are in that same situation, and the dogs are in the same situation as well, where, they've been maybe left at home all day long or part of the day, and they're cooped up and they're riled up. And when you get all kinds of dogs in that same mood where they're a little bit, they've had too much sitting around, they have too much energy, maybe they're not acting like they normally do, and you throw them into one caged in area, which is essentially what a dog park is, you often are creating a recipe for some trouble or for disaster. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about why dog parks can be so bad. So first, let's talk about the good. Let's talk about why dog parks can be a good tool, or how they can be valuable. First off, of course, it's a place where your dog can exercise. And again, they're often going to be able to exercise off leash. There's not really, they can kind of run wherever the fencing will allow them to, and they kind of have some freedom, which can be very, very nice. Another reason that it can be beneficial is just that, if they don't have a great recall or whatever it might be, you're not having to worry about them taking off if you're just going to a park and playing or something like that. So those are the good things. Most people take their dogs to a dog park because they want their dog to get some exercise. So that's like the reasoning. That's why dog parks can be okay, is because it can be a good outlet for your dog. Now let's talk about the not so good things, or the controversial things, or the problems with dog parks. Because again, if you're a new pup parent or you're someone who goes to dog parks, I think it's good to be aware of these challenges that can come up with the dog park experience. So we asked some of the professional trainers that we work with, we said, what's your opinion on dog parks? And I actually said in one sentence, I let them have some wiggle room, but I basically said in one sentence, what's your opinion on dog parks, or how do you feel about dog parks, or what would you like people to know about dog parks? I'm going to give you one of the quotes first. So this first one is from Britt Erickson, and she's with Good Boy Training Asbury. Hope I pronounced that right, Asbury. And she said, dog parks are a great exercise outlet, but not a place you take your puppy to be socialized. And let's break that down a little bit, because the exercise, the outlet, the ability for your dog to, interact with other dogs is a positive thing. But why do you think she mentioned not socializing your puppy at a dog park? So let's just go off the assumption that your dog is up to date, your puppy is up to date on their vaccinations, they're good to be around other dogs. I think the reason that Britt said it's not a good place for that socialization is you get so many variables. There's so much unpredictability with a dog park. You get, if you even think about, in our private Facebook community that many of you are a part of, the diversity of opinions, the diversity of backgrounds, the diversity of where people are from. There's so many different mindsets and belief systems that go into raising a puppy. And when you get all those people into one spot, you might have someone who raises their dog completely different. And that difference in how they're raising their dog can have an effect on you. And let me explain how. So, for example, if someone who is at the dog park, right, and typically most dog parks, there's not even a sign up process. There's no, is your dog even vaccinated? What's your dog's behavior like? There's no checks or systems to make sure that the dogs going in there are going to be, you know, good dogs, safe dogs, those types of things. And so if you're taking a puppy in there and you're trying to make positive experiences with other dogs, you might have someone bringing their dog in and they might use aversive methods and their dog might be a little bit aggressive or a little bit reactive or, not have the best like ability of playing with other dogs and being social. And what can happen is if your puppy or your dog has a bad experience in that socialization window where they maybe get, I know attacked can be like the worst case scenario, but sometimes it's just as simple as like a scary experience or they get run over by a big dog or whatever it might be. You've just created a negative experience for your puppy. And therefore, it can be problematic. You don't want to lean on dog parks for socialization. So I think Britt's quote there was spot on. And I love that quote. This is another good piece of feedback because I know a lot of people listen to this episode and say, well, that's the only option I have. Like, I live in a big city. There's not a lot of parks or X, Y, and Z different reason why dog parks might be one of the outlets you have or one of the few outlets that you have. Here's some good advice from Amber Akar. We've worked with her a lot. You've probably seen her on Instagram. She's got great advice. She said, when going to a dog park, sit outside for a while and observe the dogs inside, their body language, and how their owners handle situations to best determine if it's a good idea or not for you and your dog to enter. I think that is golden advice. So many times when we get to the dog park, our dog is just, they're off the walls. They know where we're going. They're excited. They want to get in. And we just rush in there. We don't take time to really kind of see our environment, see the situation and observe what's happening. The points that Amber said here was, observe the dogs, observe their body language, and observe how the owners are handling the situations. And that's one of the most important points that I want to drive home is oftentimes it's not the dog's fault or the dogs that are problematic in some cases, because here's the thing, even just like with let's take preschoolers, for example, right? Human preschoolers, you put them together in a room. Most of the time they're going to get along. They're going to be fine. But, if someone's not there to monitor them, if someone's not keeping an eye on like, how are the kids interacting? Are they sharing? Is there problems sparking up? Like those types of things can get out of hand. Like, you might, we probably all can remember times when we were kids or whatever, where, two kids just got on each other's nerves, and then they hit each other or one of them pushes the other one over and then it's a problem and it turns into an issue. And that is often solved by having someone in the room with those preschoolers who is keeping an eye on them and who is aware, who is, more intellectually capable to understand, this is like potentially going to be a problem. Let's separate these two kids, that type of thing. What happens in dog parks so often, and I think why Amber said, see how owners are handling their dogs, is you get pup parents. I hate to call people out on this, but you get pup parents who go into dog parks, they let their dog off, and then they're on their phone the rest of the time. They don't even look up. They're not even paying attention to the dog. They don't know what their dog's doing. They don't know if their dog just went to the bathroom, if they need to pick it up. They don't know if their dog is bothering another dog. They don't know if their dog is in an uncomfortable situation. It can be so problematic. It's my example of you throw preschoolers into a room and you don't give them any supervision. There are bound to be problems that occur. But if there is proper supervision, if every pup parent is keeping an eye on their dog, they can, read their dog's body language, know if there's things that are getting a little bit too overwhelming for one or another dog, they can separate the dogs, those types of things. Nine times out of 10, the problems that I've seen that pop up from dog parks is because the pup parent, the human, is not paying attention and they're not reading their dog or a dog around their dog's body language, and things spiral out of control. That's why fights happen at dog parks, honestly, is because you get dogs who are doing their best to just, put yourself in your dog's shoes. It's difficult to be meeting all these new dogs and these new experiences, new smells, everything's new. There's often like a lot of variability that comes along with it. And if you're not there to kind of keep an eye on your dog and you're not focusing in on them and making sure they're okay, it can lead to situations where they get overwhelmed. And that's when bites happen. And that's when fights occur. And that's when problems happen in dog parks. So that's kind of a note from Amber of see how pup parents are handling. If you go up to a dog park and there's only one or two dogs and you sit for a minute and you watch and each pup parent is like really paying attention to what's going on and they're interacting well with each other and with the dogs, you know, take a step in, but it's so important that you analyze the situation beforehand before going in. Here's another quote that we had from Richard Gonzalez, who's been on this podcast before. He said, "I believe that dog parks are unpredictable, and I feel that there are better options to get our dogs the physical activity they need. There's just too many unpredictable variables that could cause physical, emotional, or mental harm to my dog, and it's not worth it to me." So those first two tips from Britt and Amber, you know, they gave us some reasoning as to, or how to approach it more carefully or more methodically. But Richard here is saying it's not worth it to him. And I think that's an important point to make with dog parks to determine for yourself and for your dog is, are you okay with the worst case scenario? Because oftentimes the worst case scenario in a dog park can be very, very bad. I have seen dogs, I have had my own dogs personally get attacked at dog parks. Excuse me. Get attacked at dog parks, and it is problematic to say the least. What happens with those dog parks is you have the unpredictable nature of lots of dogs and lots of humans interacting in one space. You don't know how they're going to respond to each other. And that can lead to things like Richard said, physical, emotional, or mental harm. We covered that a little bit earlier about, if your dog gets run over by a certain breed of dog, they might have a negative disposition to that dog for the rest of their life. If if your dog gets attacked or in a fight with a certain breed, that's happened to my dog Sunny, where she was attacked by a husky, and to this day, she's a little bit more on edge around huskies. And in hindsight, I wish that it wouldn't have occurred, but when it happens in a dog park setting, it can there's so much unpredictability. There's so much variability. You don't know how dogs are going to behave. You don't know how the pup parents associated with those dogs are going to behave. So it's very important to again, weigh the pros and cons and be aware of the cons. One point that I did want to make is, and it's kind of similar to this last one, is that some of those problems can be very long-term. If your dog has a very traumatic experience, like if your dog actually gets attacked at a dog park, that can affect them for the rest of their life. And it can make your life, not that it's just about you, right? But like it can make your life very difficult in trying to overcome maybe that reactivity or the fear or potential aggression because they were attacked. Those are things that can happen at dog parks. I want to close out with real quickly 3 alternatives to dog parks, because if you haven't noticed already, most of these trainers, they're talking about apprehensions, and anytime that there's apprehensions, that means there is a possibility of very, very bad things occurring. So I want to talk about 3 alternatives, because a lot of people say, the dog park is where my dog can run free, but the dog park is where they can get their exercise. And I understand that in some instances that might be the only option that you have, but I want to provide 3 potential alternatives. Number 1 is puppy play dates or just doggy play dates. If you have space, even if it's just in your home, or you can go to a park where they're on leash, where the dog, the human, the interaction is much more kind of staged and safe because there's so many less dogs. That's the problem with dog parks, is you just get such a sheer high number of dogs that like it exponentially just makes all the potential problems that much worse. So if you can cut it down and say, it's only one other dog or maybe 2 other dogs, it's way easier for you as a pup parent to kind of keep your eyes and keep focused on what's happening to your dog. A second alternative is, a park with a long lead. Naturally, there are leash laws. We have to follow them as pup parents. That is part of being a pup parent. But even if you are somewhere that doesn't have a great off-leash area for your dog, you can still give your dog exercise with a long lead. You can get a 30, 50, 100-foot lead and still play fetch with your dog and keep the leash in your hand so that you're in control, you're obeying the leash laws, and your dog is still able to run freely. I do this with my dogs from time to time where, I'll have them on a long lead and we'll go and just play some kind of closer fetch, So instead of throwing it 100 yards, I'm only throwing it, maybe 10 or 15, and they're still able to go get it. They get to run, they get that mental, the physical exercise. But it's, you're more in control and you're not around all these other dogs where potential problems can occur. And the third one, it's just generally giving your dog mental exercise. There's no replacement for physical exercise. I'm not trying to say that, because your dog has to be physically exercised. And so, if you don't want to do dog parks, you can find parks that allow either off leash hours, or you have your dog on a leash. You can go on runs, you can go, you know, on longer walks. But additionally, it's important to remember that our dogs need mental exercise, and that can actually help them with being, less rambunctious, more tired out. You can use things like a flirt pole. You can use a snuffle mat. You can use lick mats. There are so many different ways that you can give your dog mental exercise. So I hope you've been able to form some type of opinion for yourself. A lot of this, whenever there's anything that has to do with opinions, you may have your mind made up and you might say, you know what, I'm just going to go to dog parks anyways. And that's okay. And I think it's important, to take the advice of Amber and, when you're going to a dog park, wait a minute, watch, keep an eye on how the dogs and how the humans are interacting. But if you're like me, I have found for myself, for my 3 dogs, just don't think that the risks of a dog park outweigh the positives. And I want to close off with one more quote from Erica Gonzalez. She's been on this podcast before. She has great advice. This is what she had to say when I said, "Okay, I need to know your opinion on dog parks in just one sentence, or one thought." She said, quote, "I have a lot I can say about dog parks, but I'll just say this. You probably won't see me at any." So, food for thought. Multiple professional dog trainers advise against dog parks because I'm sure that they have met plenty of dogs where they are trying to overcome, reaction or aggression that is oftentimes rooted in things that happened at dog parks. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I don't want to come down too hard on dog parks because I understand that everyone's situation is different. That might be the only opportunity that you have, or, it might be really difficult for you to do other things, but I just I warn you to really weigh out the pros and the cons of dog parks. And like Amber said, if you are going to go, at the bare minimum, observe the dogs and the humans before you go in, so you know what you're getting into. And the last point I want to make is, if you go to a dog park, and this is true of any scenario, whether you're at a puppy play date, or you're just walking down the street and you are interacting with another dog, if at any time you feel uncomfortable and you can see that your dog is uncomfortable, just leave. Just leave. It is more important that your dog feels safe and comfortable than they maybe get 5 or 10 more minutes of running around time. Because you can find alternative ways to exercise your dog, but I can promise you this, it is very, very difficult to overcome mental and emotional challenges that your dog may deal with if they get attacked at a dog park, or if they get seriously overwhelmed and are uncomfortable and put into too stressful of a situation. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, please leave us feedback. We love to hear ideas that you have for episodes and hear reviews. But other than that, we will catch you on the next episode.